Hello? Thank you for being in a new video. This time I have with me the Nothing Phone 2A and we're going to give it a full review so you can get to know it. Let's get started. This is Nothing's mid-range device, so we are going to find quite a few things of the essence of Nothing, such as the glyph interface. The whole user interface comes completely customized, so they move a Nothing experience also to the mid-range for those who don't want to spend so much money but want to have a device with these features. So, its launch price in Mexico has been 6,699 pesos. This is approximately $400. Although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. Generally in Mexico the prices are a little higher, and remember that they include taxes, but I consider this to be one of the most attractive devices in this segment, as most competitors will be lower, with some exceptions, but in most sections this device can come out a winner in many aspects. So what do you think if you join me to know it? Although before I must anticipate that one of its weak points, so to speak, is its distribution, because you can only buy it in the online store of Nothing or also in free market, but there is no official way to buy it in physical stores, so if you are not a person who usually buy much online, maybe this can cause some distrust or some fear, but as a benefit of having this distribution, the price can be much tighter because they do not have to share so much money with distributors, so now join me to know it. The device will have a very neat aesthetic and very Nothing style, so we will find considerably reduced bezels, and we could say that virtually symmetrical notes that with a white background we can see more clearly that it is a device that has a very refined aesthetic in this sense of the front, and in fact it is not only a nice aesthetic but also a good resistance, integrating Gorilla Glass 5, a level of resistance that will definitely be very good for the price range. On the right side we will find the power button, and on the left side the volume buttons. This is something original because virtually all devices today are integrating all the buttons. On one side at the top will only be available a microphone, while at the bottom is placed the tray where you can place 2 SIM cards, and something very curious is that even this tray is personalized with the typography that uses Nothing, then definitely put much care to detail here. We will also find another microphone in addition to the USB port.C port, and the speaker. The device is 8.55 millimeters thick and offers us a weight of 190 grams, having an average like most smartphones in this price point. But note that in this rear stage we have the glyph interface that differentiates it a lot from its competitors. This makes the device look very original and is possibly its main attraction. These lights we will be able to take advantage of in different areas of the system that I will tell you a little later, but for now, as a design element, definitely have a special touch that make this device is very different from the rest. And in this case I have with me the black edition, but it is also available in white, where the transparent back cover makes a little more sense, because in this dark edition is not achieved to distinguish too much, but Nothing is a brand that likes to use transparent materials, so that is also incorporated in this device, but I insist that in this edition of black color does not get to notice too much. In fact, also have another special edition but with a limited number of units. Then the design, I think it becomes an attractive point in this device, both in aesthetics and water resistance, which means that it can withstand splashes, and even if you get to fall into very shallow water can also survive, only that does not resist being submerged to greater depths. Then consider it, but I think in the price range can get to meet well. The screen is a very strong element of this device, as it integrates a size of 6.7 inches. In that sense is very similar to most smartphones today, but here the big advantage is that it is a panel or flexible LED that allows you to have ultra thin bezels also at the bottom, and is also a panel compatible with HDR technology. Then there are some areas of the screen that are able to emit more brightness than others when you're watching these contents, and that helps it to be a perspective of much more realism. Then this screen, that you can take advantage of it very well on other platforms like YouTube, Netflix, Prime Video and other platforms compatible with this type of content. The screen really is very good and will offer us a slightly higher resolution than Full HD, that is 2412 by 1084 pixels, so it is a resolution that gives us a very good level of detail. You will notice it especially in very small text where you will have excellent readability. Then it is a screen that is very good wherever you want to see it, also has very good viewing angles, so that even if you are going to share the content with some friends from some side can still have a good level. of visualization, the screen reaches a peak of 1300 nits watching HDR content, and even also globally has a very high brightness that can have an excellent outdoor viewing, and minimum brightness is also comfortable for indoor use or at night. And within the accessibility options, there is also the option of extra dimming in case you need it at night. In fact, this screen can go up to 120 Hz in its refresh rate. Then it can show you very smooth movements in the system animations or in some content when scrolling or in some games, but with the dynamic adjustment it is also able to lower the refresh rate down to 30 Hz to not consume so much power, a feature that is unique in this device with respect to its competitors that will not integrate this kind of technologies. So the screen really is very advanced. It seems to be a screen of a completely higher range than what this device cost. Although it only has 2 color calibration modes, and the truth is that there is not much difference between them, although it also has a color temperature adjustment, so you can put the screen a little warmer or cooler. In fact, if you get to notice a lot of difference when moving this slider, then the screen you will enjoy it a lot. The sound experience will also be very good because it not only has the speaker at the bottom, but also in the area of the earpiece for calls will integrate another speaker so that we have stereo sound and gives us the feeling of a very broad and good quality sound, has good presence of bass frequencies on both sides according to its price, then definitely will offer us a very good experience in this sense. Let's hear a small test, but remember that it is not the same as listening to it live. The volume is also good, although it is not characterized for being a device with thunderous volume, although from my point of view it should improve in terms of audio software, as it does not integrate any equalizer or Dolby Atmos or any additional audio function. Only we will see the enhanced audio function that will enable a high resolution audio for external devices, but all this is through the USB port.C port. And speaking of enhanced audio, you will notice that it does not have a headphone jack, so you will need to connect headphones via cable where you can enjoy that feature I mentioned. But in this case, fortunately, if you use wireless headphones, it also has a high compatibility with many codecs, from the most basic ones like SBC and AC, but it also has Qualcomm aptX LHDC in versions 3 and 4 that you can also enjoy for higher resolution sound, and also the LDAC codec. So with compatible headphones, if you could get to enjoy a premium wireless audio experience, the device integrates 3 microphones, one on the bottom, another on the back, although this microphone on the back seems to be only focused on noise cancellation, as it does not perceive audio through it. Below you will hear a test using this device.
Esta es una grabación realizada con el Nothing Phone 2A utilizando el modo de grabación normal.
Note that it also has a voice focus mode that will try to eliminate outside noise.
Esta es una prueba utilizando el modo foco de voz que posiblemente aplicará cancelación de ruido.
Definitely, if you get to notice that cancels noise with this mode, something that comes in quite handy if you are recording in a bit noisy environments, and you can also record in environment mode, which will most likely use all the microphones for an even more spacious recording. Below you will see a video recorded with this device in a very noisy environment, setting the sound system in my living room at maximum volume to see how it would behave in these scenarios. It can generate a bit of distortions in the noisiest scenarios, so for concerts it won't be a bad option, but I don't think I could give you a recording with such a high quality. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f2.2 aperture and fixed focus. Fortunately, it has a gesture of opening by pressing twice the power button to quickly access the camera, not only when the device is locked but also when the device is in use, which gives you very good agility for those moments where you need to open the camera as quickly as possible. The front camera seems to have a good enough agility. Although it will not offer us a burst in the lower left corner, we will be able to have the button to activate the beauty mode, which only has 2 levels. You can activate it and it will tell you that it is in a natural retouch, and if you press on it again it will tell you that it is in an intense retouch, but you cannot set parameter by parameter as in other devices. It also integrates a button where you can change the amplitude of this lens, and at the top there is a button where you can show the color filters that you can have when you take these pictures. In fact, some of them are very curious special effects. And note that in this case only has the touch shutter to facilitate the capture of the photographs, as it does not integrate the easy capture through the palm of the hand. And that is something that I think could be improved by activating the option that I showed you in the settings. You can touch anywhere on the screen to take the picture. That can give you a little more comfort selfies of this device. I consider that they have a very nice natural color in that sense. I really like the experience. Also get a good level of detail despite having fixed focus. In this case offer 2 levels of amplitude, so the narrower angle could give you a little more emphasis on the face, and with the arm stretched you can get to have a little better framing for a picture with a landscape or a group of friends, but anyway it does not seem to have a good level of detail. I insist it's not that wide, but in the price range I think it can compete in a good way, and in fact for group shots it will also give a good result. I insist it's not that wide, but at least you can fit a group of 3 friends at the same distance. If you want to have more friends, they should be further away as it has fixed focus. If you are too close to the camera it will come out of focus. The result is going to be out of focus, so you can't have ultra sharp details of your face indoors. The color saturation is a little over the top. Notice that my face is slightly redder than it should be, but it's a slight thing, it's not too bad, and the noise is slightly under control. There still seems to be a bit of graininess in the darker areas, but I think it's still a good quality picture. I think it is still a good quality photograph at night. We noticed a very similar result, again slightly more reddish than I would like, but overall we have a good result. I like it especially for the level of detail it reaches that few devices can show in this kind of light conditions and especially in this price range. So it is a front-facing camera that I really liked even in night backlighting, and even in backlighting at night it is a very nice camera that I really like. Even in night, backlighting in a super complicated environment takes advantage of the screen to illuminate your face a little better, and the result is good in terms of light balance, although the tone can become a little weird if you are in a warm situation because the screen projects a very cold light. And with this camera you can also take portrait pictures, and note that the result is quite good because of the good noise management that this camera has. Because of the good noise management, so it does not give a strange result in these scenarios with the portrait mode, and in the day the result will also be positive if only your face is present with some background. But if there is presence of some objects, notice that it is not able to keep them in focus, so it is still not such a professional photograph. But I insist, if there is no object in the picture you can really get good results if you can achieve good results with the portrait mode. Really, if you can get to achieve good results, and note that in backlit scenarios, despite the preview does not look optimized if it detects that you need to use HDR. So the subsequent result is quite good, slightly more saturated than we would like, but I think if you get to balance well the brightest areas and dark areas, giving a very positive result in these scenarios. And with respect to the rear photographic system, we will first find the 14mm ultra-wide camera with a 50-megapixel sensor, f-aperture 2 points, and fixed focus is remarkable that give us 50 megapixels for the ultra-wide camera. As in this price range, no device is going to offer you that level of ultra-wide camera. On the other hand, we will find the main camera with 23mm with 50 megapixels also in its sensor and f-aperture, 1.88 with optical stabilization and optical stabilization. Offer that level of ultra-wide camera. On the other hand, we will find the main camera of 23mm with 50 megapixels also in its sensor and aperture f1.88 with optical stabilization and autofocus. So sincerely, the camera looks with very good specifications. Evidently, the preview of this device when taking a picture has some delay like any device, but in this case I tried to take the picture when it reaches the number 3, and the truth is that if it reacts very fast, so it is a very good quality shutter. Looking through the viewfinder of the cell phone, you can have the exact picture. If you are watching real life, you can get to have a small delay, but even so, this delay is minimal. It also has a burst of up to 20 photos, then you can have a good speed and does not take long to start, so it is a good burst, although with a fairly short limit the camera interface seems nice but not very functional, because to change mode you need to make many slides. You cannot quickly slide the entire menu. I found the camera interface to be nice but not very functional, because to change modes you need to make many slides. You cannot quickly slide the entire menu because it goes one by one, and that honestly makes me despair a little. Is a very minimalist camera that reminds a lot to the Apple camera with few modes available, and at the top has a button to access the filters as we saw in the front camera. Also, we will be able to enable or disable the HDR, and the timer is within reach of, and if in addition to the focus and exposure you want to control more things, you can access the expert mode, where is available also the exposure compensation, the shutter speed up to 6400, the shutter speed up to 32 seconds, the white balance, the focus, and also allows you to take pictures in a row. Then if you have some tools for professional photography, fortunately the device also integrates a QR code scanner directly from the main interface, although it may be a little difficult to reach the button to activate it, and finally it does not integrate any document scanner, so for that you need a separate application. This device allows you to take 50 megapixel pictures with both the ultra-wide camera and the main camera, but in neither camera are you going to notice such a high level of detail. I think even though the picture is indeed 50 megapixels, it's not as detailed as other devices we've seen, although in the price range it competes well. Moving objects also manages to capture them with good quality. The ultra-wide camera is perhaps not as capable of keeping all areas sharp, but the main camera I think has better capabilities. In fact, in this shot you also notice the color rendition, which can be very different between the main camera and the ultra-wide camera. The main camera and the ultra-wide camera in automatic mode, the pictures will be about 12.5 megapixels. The ultra-wide camera has a slightly warmer color rendering, and obviously you are going to notice some distortions and a little bit of chromatic aberration, especially in the edges, but in the price range the ultra-wide camera has a little bit warmer color rendering. But in the price range, I think it competes well. Perhaps I would like nothing more than to perfect the white balance, and I'm almost sure they will do it, because nothing is a manufacturer that usually launches several updates to improve the camera with the main camera. The white balance seems to me more successful with regard to, in this case, we do not see so many distortions or chromatic aberration by the lens, so it is more advisable to take pictures with the main camera in these indoor conditions where there is not so much lighting. It seems that there is not so much difference in the interpretation of colors that makes the ultra-wide camera with respect to the main camera. So in this scenario, I like the pictures with both cameras, although the main camera will give you much more detail, of course, but both do a good job in this scenario, controlling well noise, maintaining good color saturation, and also good detail in backlit conditions. The preview is still not so optimized because there are several areas that look burnt, but it has automatic HDR, so the processed picture will be very good in terms of light balance. So in this sense, if it takes very good pictures, the ultra-wide camera also has a good performance in this type of scenario, so the behavior really is very good at night. They also have a very good behavior, so it seems that where they need to optimize the use of this camera is when there is a lot of light, and that is much easier, unlike other devices that behave very badly when there is little light. This curiously has an opposite behavior. With less light behaves very well. Observe how it also manages to expose very good way the most illuminated area and controls perfectly well the noise in the darkest areas. The main camera has a very similar behavior, and in this case the night mode is only enabled automatically. There is no manual way to enter that mode, so maybe that could be improved, but in both cases you did use the night mode, and that is why the result is very good. In fact, also using a little zoom, it recommends you to use the night mode, although in this case you notice that the most illuminated areas are overexposed. In the darker areas, we also have a very good result in terms of the level of detail. In fact, also the color can become accurate enough with the main camera. I think the color is not so accurate, but if we have a good level of detail and above all a good handling of noise, generating very few artifacts and a very few artifacts. Noise generating very few artifacts in the darker areas with respect to the zoom is worth noting that although it offers you a shortcut of 2x in the camera interface, does not preserve optical quality in the photograph, then the zoom is very poorly optimized. Observe this other example. We will see the photograph with zoom, and definitely although it is a photograph that looks good, it does not maintain optical quality, and the maximum zoom is 10x, and it is quite simple, so it does not stand out in this aspect. I think with updates they should improve the optimization optimization of the 50 megapixel sensor for macro photography. The result is quite nice, especially if you apply some digital zoom, then you can get to notice various details of small objects, maintaining a good interpretation of colors without the need for a macro camera. And if the ultra-wide camera does not give you as much detail as you would like or as much amplitude, remember that you can use the panoramic mode, and it is a photograph in high resolution that you can definitely enjoy. Finally, for the portrait photography, the result seems to me that it is not as positive as we would have liked to observe, that the detection of the edges is a little strange, has low level of detail, does not detect all objects in the foreground. Then it is a simple portrait photography also, although it allows us to zoom 2x to have a telephoto perspective, does not maintain both level of detail and still has this erroneous behavior in the detection of the foreground. Then the portraits could also improve, and I hope they do through an update. For video recording, an excellent news is that the two rear cameras support recording in 4 to 30 frames per second, although the front camera stays in full HD, but it is excellent news to see that quality in the two rear cameras at the time of starting your video recording. You will notice that immediately removes the transition between the ultra-wide camera and main camera, something I consider a very big disadvantage, but fortunately it keeps quick shortcuts to switch between 1 and 2x and also allows you to load this slider view to quickly move the zoom. You can also pause and resume your video recording and take pictures while recording, but you can't rotate to the front camera without the need to stop your video recording. In fact, while you are recording video, also does not allow you to manipulate the flashlight, and this is definitely a weak point, although these things could perhaps change with an update. Also note that for video recording, we do not have manual settings as if we saw in the photo mode. Something very remarkable is that it allows you to record in 4K with the ultra-wide camera, because in this price range, almost no device will do it, so you can record with a very good level of amplitude, and in fact it looks with good quality. It generates a little bit of chromatic aberration in the edges, but believe me, other devices record very bad with this camera in this price range, but this device does it well. And if you record with this camera in this price range, you can record with a very good level of amplitude. Device does it well, and if you record with the main camera, you will gain a little more detail plus better stability and obviously a little more accurate color. So I think the video recording, if you could get to highlight on this device, although in some movements can be some cuts a little annoying, but that should be perfected with an update. Something I definitely didn't like is that if you want to zoom, it doesn't allow you to switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera, so you need to stop your recording and start it again. If you want to do that action, not even recording in full HD allows you to make this change, so definitely the zoom quality should improve. In fact, it doesn't look very good detail. So the zoom, specifically speaking in video recording, is not something so remarkable, although in this price range, believe me, very few devices are going to excel in this. The indoor recording will be with good quality. Also, the ultra-wide camera gives us good detail, good color, and also good stability. The main camera has a bit more color accuracy and will improve detail, but I like that the ultra-wide camera again shows us that it has a good level of recording for this price range. And in backlit conditions, unfortunately, is not able to balance well. Light and shadow will give priority to illuminate the face. So when it detects a face, can get to overexpose some rear areas, although it is not a complete disaster because it does not get to burn excessively. But obviously here you notice that we are not yet in front of a high-end device with the main camera manages also to have a good enough balance. But if you get to notice these changes in exposure when it detects and stops detecting the face, even the focus comes to have a little trouble, but still comes to be considered as a good quality. Recording curiously integrates a recording mode in HDR, although the video quality drops to full HD, but the result is very similar, does not seem to improve too much at night camera. Ultra-wide camera came to battle a lot in the white balance as the scene comes out very reddish, although this fortunately could be corrected with an update, but in this sense it is also noted that the camera is still not so high level, although the darker areas, if you manage to perceive them well, the brightest areas fails to balance them both, but still the result I think is positive for the good handling. The main camera balances a little better the area of lights and still has a good noise management, especially in the darker areas. You will notice that if it is able to collect a very good amount of light, unlike other devices in this price, then the video camera, I think if it comes to stand out over several competitors with respect to stabilization, something that I love is that even recording in 4 almost maintains stabilization with the stabilization of the camera. In 4, almost maintains the stabilization with the ultra-wide camera. Then you have a very good scene because with the ultra-wide camera movements are very well disguised both when walking and running despite not having an action mode or something similar, and if you record with the main camera again you will have a good level of stabilization to go walking, even recording in 4K, something that in the price range almost no one is going to offer you. And also if you get to run, I think the result can become acceptable, although the pauses and cuts in the video become more noticeable. Of course, this device does not integrate a portrait recording mode, and regarding the focus, note that is able to adjust it with a good speed. I think the faces detect them well. You will not be having too many problems unless you are in a very complicated light condition, and even small objects seem to me that if you get to focus well but not so accurately, especially in this type of scenarios where there is a little backlight, could get to have some small complications. But overall I think it is a positive thing. The device also has a fast camera mode that can be in 4K, and that's a positive thing. Slowest it can go is 15x, which I think is too fast for recording people movements, plus it doesn't seem to have stabilization, but if you leave the device on a base you can get to record landscapes in a very nice way because it is able to go up to 960x, so it definitely has good fast motion capabilities, although for people movements I think it is going too fast. And it also integrates a slow motion mode, which is not that sophisticated, but for the price range I think it manages to compete well. We are talking about full HD at 120 frames per second. The front camera also has a good recording quality. Although it is not capable of recording video in 4K, I think it is a bit lacking in that, but it is appreciated that it has a good color rendition and good stability. However, this stability is achieved by cropping the image a lot, so you need to stretch your arm a lot if you want to be well framed in this final result, and obviously recording backlit will not have such a remarkable performance. Is a very complicated scene for a device of this price, so it gets to overexpose and burn many of the backlit areas of the back. Indoors. In fact, you will also notice that much more noise appears in this video, and although it goes at 30 frames per second, gives the feeling of going to a lower rate, the color also comes to be a little paler, there is little contrast than this camera if you require a well-lit environment, and we will confirm it at night, where you will notice that there is little level of detail because it tries to reduce noise as much as possible. Also, the vibrations when walking are perceived too much, so it is a camera that suffers a lot when there is not so much light available, and in fact if you go to even darker environments you will notice that this device does not have any function to illuminate your face through the screen, and obviously here the noise will rise in a more considerable way. On the front camera, time-lapse mode is also available, but again it seems to be too fast for people movements, and it has no slow motion, no portrait mode, and no dual recording. This device comes with Android 14 and on it running Nothing OS in its version 2.5. Then we have a small layer of customization, adding some functions, especially modifying the aesthetics. As you see on the main screen looks great, but as you install applications will remove this monochromatic tone, then honestly is a customization that I find very unpleasant. Obviously in the customization section we will find several functions, including one to modify the icon pack in case you want to have the color of Android will result in something very similar to what we already saw, or you can leave it on default so that all icons look colored and look a little more even. In fact, you can also download icon packs that you can apply on the system, and that is something very interesting that few manufacturers allow, so you can download these packages but must be special for Nothing. Within the customization also notes that we can change settings of the lock screen. For example, we can place some widgets, which is very good and few manufacturers allow. Then we can simply select which widget we want to appear on this screen, and gradually we add them notes that has a good variety of digital or analog clocks, also world clock, and we can even select to appear some specific picture, but we need enough space for its specific picture, but we need enough space for it because it occupies 4 spaces. We can also select some other widgets like weather on screen, compass, and even quick settings of the device. So all of them will appear on our lock screen, so we can modify things in a very simple way. Note that the result is pretty good, and with a simple touch we can modify this kind of parameters of our system. We can also change the shortcuts that appear on the sides. By default brings home controls and access to the wallet, but you can select the one you want, and when setting a wallpaper also notes that brings different effects. For example, this atmosphere effect, that what it will do is something very similar to what makes the iPhone, is that on the lock screen will have your solid wallpaper, and when you enter the list of applications or the main screen will have some blurring, giving us a blurring of the background, and when you enter the list of applications or the main screen will have some blurring, giving the same effect as in the lock screen. Main screen will have some blurring, resulting in a very nice aesthetic touch. Could also select this glass effect that gives a touch like glass, which is also interesting, especially for the animations that gets observed. That also gives a touch of good aesthetics to your device. Would also allow you to change the grid to select specifically how you want to appear all these icons, and that's basically all we can get to change the level of customization. And by having Android 14 in a practically pure state, note that we can create wallpapers simply with different categories, and everything will be created with artificial intelligence, so you can combine different types of categories and then you're combining it to finally create a wallpaper. Although it doesn't specifically bring through text, but you can definitely achieve quite nice effects. Obviously, another of the highlights will be the glyph interface and everything that you can achieve with it. For starters, you can select the level of brightness that these backlights will have. You can also select different ringtones that will go in conjunction with the back cover lights. In fact, they will also go in conjunction with the vibration engine, which is too good because it is on the x-axis. Then it is going to give you a feedback experience both in hand and visually through these lights. Obviously, you can choose the tone that you want from the 10 custom nothing tones, or also note that you could get to create your own tone with the composer that needs to be installed separately. It also allows you to select how you want the notifications to behave in this type of signals, so that they light up differently when you receive this type of alerts. It also has a feature called flip to glyph that will avoid the sounds and will only show you the lights when you have the device face down. That would be a way to have a kind of a LED of notifications. It also has a timer glyph where you can set a countdown and then place the phone face down for this countdown to start running, although curiously it is not compatible with the native clock, so you need to enter the settings to the glyph interface settings. And then the timer, so I find it impractical, should have a clock application designed to specifically take advantage of this. You can also have this interface point to your volume setting, so you can easily see what setting it is on without having to look at the screen. It can also serve as a progress bar, but only for certain apps that are compatible. For example, you can see the progress of your path, and also with this food delivery app or with the calendar, but honestly it doesn't seem to be taken advantage of that much yet, even though nothing opened the API for developers to take advantage of this type of element. Note that it can also be synced with the music you are playing to give the effect of a clock app. You are playing to give a more advanced ambient effect, and you can also disable it so it does not light up this way when you are at night about to sleep. Unfortunately, the one-handed mode is like the iPhone, so it is only reduced on the vertical axis, but things on the right side are still far away, and also integrates a section of experimental functions where they allow you to display additional data if you connect Apple AirPods, and also allow you to have an improved tactile response, useful for some games in addition to the progress that we already saw a moment ago. Regarding gestures, note that it integrates the screen capture by sliding 3 fingers, or you can also make a partial capture. If you slide more slowly, can also request to open the Google Assistant when you hold the power button down, or also if you want to show you the shutdown options. Also, we will find some basic gestures like touching the screen to enable it, and similar things. In general, is not a system as advanced as others we've seen. Note that also in the list of recent applications, we can turn an application into a floating window application that we can resize, but curiously it doesn't seem to give us the opportunity to open several applications in this format, so it loses a lot of utility. In addition to that, we could open applications in a split screen mode in conjunction with some other applications, so in total we could keep open 3 applications, but note that it doesn't seem to give us the opportunity to open several applications in this format, so it loses a lot of usefulness. Keep open 3 applications, but note that we can not use them simultaneously, as the floating application rather seems to be just a minimized application that we can restore quickly. So the system is pretty good, especially for those looking for a very minimalist experience. Personally, I would like to have more features added, but at least it is an operating system that looks quite stable. The integrated fingerprint reader is optical and supports up to 5 records in total. Obviously will not be as fast as capacitive readers that are outside the screen, but its performance is good anyway. However, consider that does not allow you to change the unlock animation as other devices if they do, and also has facial unlocking, although remember that it is only in 2 dimensions, so it is not so recommended if your priority is security. Will not ask you to register from various angles of the face or anything like that. So it is a fairly simple facial unlock. Remember that also includes the extended unlock Google, so you can select some environments where the device will not ask you to unlock, but it will stay unlocked for a much more comfortable experience. The password manager is from Google, and fortunately if it comes well configured to first request your fingerprint before automatically filling out the forms, does not integrate a secure folder general system, but within the application Google Files there is a secure folder, although it is not able to take advantage of your fingerprint reader, but only a pin or a pattern. So here you can save some items more or less securely. Also within Google Photos there is another secure folder, but it is duplicity of functions, so it really seems that in this regard still needs to be perfected, a little more experience. Curiously, this device also includes the option to lock applications, something that is unusual in devices based on pure Android. Then you can select which applications will again request an unlock before you can access them for privacy, and you can also clone applications to have 2 instances of them on the same device. Does not integrate a child mode or a private Wi-Fi with VPN, then does not have as many features as we have seen on other devices. Also does not have a scan against malware in collaboration with some antivirus. Therefore only you are going to depend on Google Play Protect, which we all know is not so safe. If you lose your device, you will also depend on Google to find it, and also remember that it integrates the functions of digital wellness, where you can see the time you consume in certain applications to set limits, but this comes in all other devices, as well as emergency functions such as initiating an emergency call with 5 times the power button, but in this case notes that seems to have a conflict with the gesture to open the camera, so you have to be careful there. The battery has a capacity of 5000 mAh, and in this case, despite being a very common capacity in the smartphone market, I must tell you that if you get to take advantage of it in a good way, so it is very well optimized. In my test, yielded 4 hours with 26 minutes using the battery drainer in the foreground, so it really reached a good time considering that we are talking about a mid-range device. In fact, the most surprising thing was that having the battery drainer running in the background while watching YouTube videos in the foreground, if it reached a good time considering that we are talking about a mid-range device. In fact, the most surprising thing was that having the battery drainer running in the background while watching YouTube videos in the foreground, it did manage to exceed 5 hours, so the device has a pretty good performance. It manages very well the applications running in the background, so it does not close them completely but gives them low power and low priority, so it is very good in energy management. Although it could be better if it integrated an ultra power saving mode, because in this case only integrates a traditional saving mode that will help you, but in an emergency could become very short and also falls short in the charger because it is not included in the box. Supports 45 watts load but must be purchased separately. Fortunately supports the standard power delivery, so you could buy chargers from other brands that support this standard to use the charger for the device. In my case, I used a power delivery charger of 65 watts with 15 minutes recovered 25% of energy, in 30 minutes reached 55%, and the full charge was completed in 1 hour and 10 minutes. So it was not a fast charge. I think that section is one of its weakest points, not so much for the speed but by the fact of not including charger in the box. Evidently it doesn't have wireless charging, and in this case it doesn't have some battery care mechanisms either. It only seems to have this, that it will try to optimize charging overnight, but it doesn't really seem to give much priority to that. This device does support the 5G network, so it has a good level of mobile data connectivity, so your downloads will be quite fast, although unfortunately it does not integrate an option to block mobile data from certain applications. It only integrates a data saver mode, but it is not going to help you too much to restrict the consumption of certain applications. Another important fact is that it does not have support for eSIM, so if you like to travel a lot, you cannot take advantage of such features with respect to Wi-Fi connectivity. Note that if it supports very high speeds, as it has Wi-Fi 6, therefore has very good download files, applications, and everything else is going to download very quickly. In Bluetooth, we will find the version 5.3, therefore also offers good stability with its accessories and also includes NFC so that in conjunction with Google Wallet can make mobile payments or also in conjunction with other compatible applications, and even you can also connect to some accessories simply by bringing the back of this cell. What will not integrate will be FM radio. That may be an absence that weighs for several users but is common in high-end devices and has an option to project the screen wirelessly, but it will be a fairly simple transmission only in mirror format. Obviously, it will not be able to project via cable. Practically no mid-range device allows you to do that, but you can connect it to your vehicle through Android Auto. And with respect to the sensors, I think there is no major absence if you have accelerometer, geomagnetic field sensor, orientation sensor, gyroscope, light sensor, although the proximity sensor seems more like a contact sensor than proximity, as it is enabled practically when you put surfaces near the device. If you bring something closer, it will not be enabled, so it might have a little strange performance, but at least it is not a virtual sensor. The Nothing ecosystem is recently growing, so you are not going to be able to enjoy so many things. It has the Nothing Air in different configurations for its headphones, and in some regions it has a watch. In fact, there are also accessories under the brand CMF by Nothing where you could find more things, but even though it may have a growing catalog of devices, in reality the interaction between these devices will be through Google technologies like Quick Share or Google Fast Pair, so it is not going to offer us a higher level of interaction than other Android devices. In this sense, you interact in the same way as with other devices that integrate the same Google technologies, so it is not going to offer us a higher level of interaction than with other Android devices. It is not going to offer us a higher level of interaction than other Android devices in this sense. You interact in the same way as with other devices that integrate the same Google technologies. So the ecosystem feels just short in terms of devices and in terms of interaction and very dependent on Google. The cloud storage will also be through Google Drive and Google Photos, and the control of the home devices will also be through Google Home, so the brand is not so strong in this aspect. Let's talk about performance. This device incorporates the MediaTek Dimensity 7200 Pro processor, a processor that we have not tested much, but honestly seems to be giving us excellent performance. As you realize, it took 62 seconds to open all applications, i.e. an average of 3.8 seconds it took to open each application, giving a disappointing result. Disappointing, but I am almost sure that this is not due to the power of the processor but to the animations of the operating system. I do not know if you noticed, but in each application showed an initial screen with the custom icon of Nothing like the one you are seeing right now. Then that delays a lot. The opening of applications is definitely something that should be improved, because the user experience, if it is very affected by this type of animations of initial screenshots, also despite having 8 GB of RAM, seems to be not fully exploited. And we have noticed 2 application restarts in this test we are doing with 16 open applications. Then I think all this requires optimization, because despite being an operating system very close to pure Android, it seems to be a bit more loaded than it should be, and therefore it is not able to keep so many apps open in the background. So the experience honestly seems to disappoint a bit, although I am pretty sure that this should be optimized through an update, because it really looks very strange that it takes so long to open the apps, but once they are open, at least it seems that it doesn't get so clunky and it doesn't take so long to open them. That it does not become so clumsy. It is true that we have seen some application restarts, but they have not been as many as other devices at this price, so I think it can get to meet, but they should optimize it more. And besides that, has 8 GB of physical RAM. Notes that brings another 2 GB of virtual RAM supposedly, but we already realized that does not work very well, and you could extend it to an additional 8 GB, but I think it is not going to be necessary in storage if it comes to fall a little short with 128 GB compared to other alternatives that begin to offer 256 GB. Is not that this device has a bad storage, but there are competitors that are already beginning to raise the figure. Then this device may come to stay a little bit short, especially considering that you can't put a micro SD card in it. And since this device integrates 4K video recording capabilities, let's test how long it takes to export these joint clips, which in total are 1 minute long. They were all recorded with this device in 4K, and they are being exported in 4K as well, and it practically took 1 minute to export, so it is not a device that is highly recommended to work with video in 4K, although it can record video in 4K, but to edit it will take a little more time than we would like. It would be more advisable to work with full HD video, but in this case we did the test in 4K because this device can record in that resolution, something unusual in this price. With regard to the games, Curiously, within the system settings, there is the game mode, so it seems to be a little hidden, but here you can select the list of games where this setting will apply. You can also choose the style of notification if you want to go out by default or want to leave occupying as little space as possible. You can also prevent touches to avoid any unwanted touch when playing, and you can prevent the intelligent disconnection when receiving calls to prevent your game to disconnect. Finally, also have the game panel that I'll show you in a moment, and you can enable or disable the functions that appear there. Then when you open one of the games you have selected, the game mode appears, which you can enable in that panel, and notice that this game panel appears on the right hand side and it will allow you to record your screen. It will also allow you to display the frame per second count or also enable the do not disturb mode. In fact, you can also enable a button to launch screenshots, and note that it has some optimizations available only for some games. You can also access some specific game achievements leaderboards with Google Play Games, or you could also get to stream directly to YouTube your game. So it is a basic tool compared to the tools offered by other manufacturers. In Call of Duty, by default, it gives us the high graphic quality at high frame rate. We can also go up to very high graphic quality keeping the high frame rate, and in fact the ultra rate also appears, but notice that the graphic quality drops if we give priority to the high graphic quality. Obviously virtually all the effects will appear available, and in fact it is curious that if it allows us to enable all simultaneously, something that we had only seen in Snapdragon processors, the experimental function options will also appear. Then the graphic compatibility looks very good if you want the maximum frame rate. The graphic quality is set to high, and obviously with the ultra rate not as many effects will appear available, but it is still a good experience. Graphic compatibility looks very good if you want the maximum frame rate. The graphic quality is set to high, and obviously with the ultra rate will not appear so many effects available, but it is still a good experience. First we tested with the maximum rate, and in this case the experience was pretty good. Did not reach 60 frames per second, but for the price I think it's good to go to 40 frames per second with very few drops. So if it gives us a feeling of a fluid game that is not locking up every time and that does not become overheated, then the gaming experience is quite good. What I find curious, what I think is that it is a good experience. Quite good. What I find curious is that the gaming tool remains on the screen recording, something that could spoil a little your gameplays, although the frame per second count is something that possibly many people if you want to see, but the rest of buttons I would like to remain hidden in the ultra rate. This device, if it could reach up to 90 frames per second, something that is highly remarkable in this price range, is definitely a device that will offer you a gaming experience too advanced, as in this case the experience was also very stable, then yes, it is able to give you very good gameplay, very close to 90 frames per second with low peaks that are not really noticeable, so the stability is really very good. Although in this case the heating went up to 43.5 degrees Celsius, but it was on a hot day. So I think the gameplay is good in the Legends game. We changed the automatic setting. Normally we would choose the medium quality, but as it was also in Call of Duty, we put it up to the high quality, which we usually test on much more expensive devices at 60 frames per second. And again, we saw a very good result. It did not achieve 100% stability, but honestly, the result was good considering that we are putting it to a test that goes beyond the price at which this device is distributed. So definitely that if it can give you a very high performance that we usually find in more expensive devices, it has a good experience. And in this case, it got really hot compared to what we have seen in other devices in the SpongeBob game. By default, the device gives us a low resolution with a medium quality, but for the test, we raised the resolution to a medium level at 60 frames per second. Curiously, this game seems to be not so well adapted for this processor because it came to suffer a little bit more, so it had a little bit more fluctuations in stability, but the lowest peak was 31, so it remains still high enough to maintain a good gaming experience. Only if you are one of the more demanding ones, you will notice that it has some dips and rises, although as I say, none of them really very serious. So for the vast majority of people, it is going to give you excellent gameplay, and again, in this case, it didn't come to heat up. The most demanding, you will notice that it has some dips and spikes, although as I say, none of them really very serious. So for the vast majority of people, it is going to give you excellent gameplay. And again, in this case, it didn't get too hot. So yes, you can get to play comfortably without your hand bothering you. And finally, in Henshin Impact by default, it gives us the low quality, but for this test, we went up to a medium level at 60 frames per second. And with these settings, it has an average of 44 frames per second, which is pretty good. It is a decent performance. It is not a complete gaming specialist, but it can give you a good level of gameplay and it will give you a good gaming experience. I think the experience is still positive, although I insist that the most demanding in gaming may need to lower the graphics quality for greater stability, but for a large number of users, this performance will be very good. In summary, this is a very balanced device. I think it is highly recommended to purchase. Has some aspects that we hope to improve through updates because it really gives us a very good experience. The screen is excellent, the sound is very good, the front camera is also very good, the rear cameras are also good, although the video recording could still improve. The battery is also very good. Remember that you can take advantage of some details of the interface glyph that give you a very original touch, and the performance in games is very good. Possibly the performance in applications, specifically when opening them, should be polished through updates, but I insist that it is a very good device, very balanced, whose weakest point from my point of view is the software that still has few special features. For now, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked, you can indicate it, and we'll see you next time.